So this seven-eyed model we're going to speak about today was developed in 1985 by Peter Hawkins Robin Shohet. And initially, it is a supervision model. We integrate, and Anne is showing you here the book with the several editions. The last one was in 2020. It integrated the relational and systemic aspects of supervision in a single theoretical model. It's a very well-known and used model all around the world, mainly in supervision, but you're going to see that it's very interesting for self-reflection as a coach. And we adapted the model today. Instead of speaking about supervisor, we are going to speak about a reflective partner. We're going to explain this in details. And I'll let you go with this one.
Yes, so that's the broad image of what it means, and we will go through each one of those the one after the other. So we've got the client, the coachee. Well, when they started, it was about therapy. So here you've got therapists, but actually for us, it would be the coach. And then you've got also the relationship between them. You've got as well the interventions and the strategies that were used. So that's number 2. And so here you've got supervisor, but as Catherine said, here we will be using our reflective partner, and it can be an internal reflective partner as well as an external. It can be both, who will give us information. And then there is the parallel process potentially in I5 with what is happening in the field in this relationship. And finally, last but not least, we've got the organizational context, the world. And yes, here you've got more, the economics. A lot is happening in the world at the moment. If we look at the world we're living in, all of this has an impact, actually. So it's really interesting that they put together this systemic approach, not focusing only on the families at the time, but also on everything that was happening outside, inside and outside, and collecting all the information, putting that together. So that's how it started. It was more related to helping professions and therapists. And now we're using it as well in coaching, supervision, and organizations.
The drawing you see there is the 2012 edition with an add-on, which is the 6A mode, which speaks about fantasy relationship. And we'll bring that with us in the kind of questions you can ask yourselves when you're reflecting on all this. We'll see that later. So let's go further with the specific model we propose you today, adapted for our reflective and reflexive practice sessions. So you can find the coachee, the coach, the reflective partner, and the different modes, the different eyes we're going to discover and experiment. And we'll give you examples and an eye.
If we start with the I1, it's really about the coachee, our client. And it's really, how do we bring that client into the room? And how do we explore the topic and anything that is related to the client? And it can be little details, how they turn up, whether they're on time or not, how they dress, how they speak. There's a lot of information there, what they say about themselves and what they don't say. And that's really interesting, this, chemistry meeting. We had a lot of information in the chemistry meeting, actually. And as a Gestaltist, I would say pre-contacting makes a lot of sense, and we learn a lot. So really, it's about, what do we notice first when we meet that person? Anything that strikes us. And also, how do they come to coaching? What brings them here? Do they want it? Don't they want it? Who organizes that? Really, what strikes me when I meet that person for the first time? So really, that's the I1. And you've got all the questions here. I'm not going to read all of them. Now there is also I2, and the I2 is more focused on what I did as a coach, what are my interventions and the strategies. And it's really about what are the choices I made, what are my skills. So what did I do during my sessions? What did I notice? How did I do them? What is the timing? And what is really interesting, and as a Gestaltist again, I would say, what am I avoiding? Am I noticing there are things I'm avoiding? And what am I saying? And any other options, anything that I haven't tried yet, but that I'm willing to try in the future. So it's really about my gesture as a coach. What am I doing and not doing? And it's more about doing rather than being. So that's for I2. And then we've got I3, and that's really something very key. It's our relationship. It's really the dynamics between us. So it's about being this time. And the dynamics can be conscious and unconscious. So it's really, for example, how, if there was a metaphor to describe our relationship, what would I say it looks like? Why did I think this coachee chose me? You know, you very often have a beauty contest between different coaches, and it's always interesting to wonder, why did this person pick me? Why is she seeing this person, or is he seeing into me that makes them drawn to me? And of course, psychological contract may be at stake already. So it's about transfer and counter-transfer. What am I observing? What am I noticing? And maybe I can also already notice what is triggering me with this client. What's happening? And how maybe other things in the system may already be impacting what's happening in our coaching relationship. So I'm really curious about the dynamics, whether it's conscious or unconscious, between my coachee and myself. And once again, without judging, and exploring once again, consciously and unconsciously, how I'm impacted by my client and how I may impact my client as well. So what's happening inside me? How am I feeling? You know, whether it is in my head, in my heart, in my body, how am I feeling when I'm meeting with my coachee? What am I saying to myself? What am I noticing in my body and my emotions? Maybe this coachee reminds me of someone, you know, and that's important to be aware of that. And how comfortable am I with this client? And then it means, am I feeling adult to adult? Or am I feeling like a child, powerless? Am I feeling like a parent who wants to protect or rescue my client? Any assumption, any limiting belief, any bias as well. What am I noticing about me when I'm with this client?
Yeah, thank you, Anne. And we're going to give you an example for the 4 first highs. I'm going to give you an individual example. I will name my client Carol. She's a coachee. She's a director, and she's a part of a program of a high potential future general managers in her company, which is an international company. When I first meet her, I'm in number 1, mode 1. I observe that her body is agitated. I can see a high level of energy. She moves her head and upper body very much. She's also smiling and confident. And very quickly, I feel a good connection with her. I said to myself as I left her that at the first rendezvous, that she might be tiring others, considering the high level of energy expressed in her behavior.
And
Great.
for me, it's about team coaching. I was called in a hospital for a team, and I was called by HR. So it's interesting, HR calling me, asking me for help, rescuing already. And actually, HR wants help because this team seems to not to be working at all anymore. And when I meet the people from the team, what I noticed is that there is no energy and they don't want any help. Actually, they say they're fine. But they look down, they find it difficult to look at me in the eyes. So it's really strange as a meeting. And they're speaking very softly. I was really surprised, like if they were speaking like this. They couldn't speak loud. There was something that couldn't be said, almost whispering. And I had the feeling, right away that there was something that was hard to say, but they couldn't have spoiled. And that's the first impression I got with EIA, and that they were really sitting in the back of their chairs.
Let's go to mode 2, I number 2, with my individual client, Carol. So the mode 2, I repeat, is the coaching interventions and strategies. So this is the beginning of the coaching, actually. The official objectives of the coaching are not to exhaust herself by doing too much at too many levels. She also has to work on her behavior at high stakes moments, especially when she's on the executive committee, on the supervisory board, or in front of the media. It has been observed that she overdoes it and needs to take up space. She loses her naturalness, her authenticity. So my coaching startup strategy was to make sure that the objectives of the coaching made sense for her, build an initial audience base as well. And I identified where she's in her self-knowledge and the awareness she has of her impact on her professional environment. So I observed that she loves intensity, adrenaline, that she likes to experiment power and take place. I'm also digging to highlight that she wants to be in joy, in control of her life, which is a big knot there. Never again like she was 10 years ago, because 10 years ago in her life it was sad. It was not a real freedom for her. So I feel, I see, I can hear from her that it's okay with all this.
Yes, and as far as I'm concerned, what I notice, what I decide to do with I2 is to meet each person in the team individually to start with, to build the trust and to get them a chance to speak out, because it's easier to speak individually rather than in a group when we had the first meeting. So my first choice of intervention is to have these individual meetings, be curious and explore with each one of them. And when I offer to have a group session, they don't want it again. So it's really interesting. So they're okay to be on their own, but they don't want to be in a group.
Okay, let's go to mode number 3, I number 3, the relationship between the coach and the coachee. For my individual example with Carol, actually I was recommended by our EIA BP, who knows me and my ability to ally empathy and confrontation. I immediately notice that we have a sort of complicity with my clients. There's an immediate match, if you want, and I resonate with her high level of energy. We both have a hypersensitivity. She's intellectually sparkling, and I know the bias that could follow for me being in homeostasis with her and let me go in the pleasure of intensity, debate, sparkling intellectually, which is not the aim of the coaching. So I share this risk zone with her during the chemistry meeting because I noticed it from the beginning. And we agreed about co-responsibility, not letting us derive from the core of the coaching. I noticed there is a positive transfer between us, transfer and counter transfer based on trust and mutual esteem. And there is a risk as well of excessive idealization on one side and lack of objectivity on the other. So we have to watch out about homeostasis here. That's what I can say.
Thank you. And as far as I'm concerned, in terms of relationship between me and, well, this hospital, what I can say is that I've been working for a long time with them. We know each other really well. And what they know as well is that not only am I a coach, but I'm a Gestalt therapist. And they feel there must be a need for a therapeutical, sensitivity or the capability to handle something that is very complicated. They don't tell me what, but I sense that it's the reason why they bring me in. And when so that's the trust, the alliance that is with the hospital. And when I'm with the team, I feel a lot of heaviness, you know, in terms of our relationship. If I had to describe it, it's very silent. So there's a kind of paradox that is very easy with the environment, with the HR, and really something that is almost numb. There's something almost numb when I speak to the people, when I'm with the people. It's like if something was numb to prevent from happening. And it's really strange and a paradox when I'm with the team and each member of the team. It's like if it was something was buried, to be honest with you.
Okay, let's go to mode 4, number 4, with my client, my individual client, Carol. When I'm with her, with this coachee, I feel joy, excitation, adrenaline, as she does. It's very positive. She reminds me of a past client, and she also reminds me the members of my caritative women club. It's very comfortable to be with her. We are adult. If I take the TA model, we are adult, and also free child as well in the relationship. The assumption I can make about the client and the situation is that she's naturally dominant and that she's tamming her inner power, which was stifled before, and as if she wanted it and was afraid of it at the same time. My limiting beliefs are that I'm right. It's the good hypothesis, and maybe it's a limit. And I can transform it in welcoming the unknown, the letting things emerge with her. So that's for my part.
And as far as I'm concerned, I feel I'm definitely invited as a rescuer. And it's something I know a lot about me. That's something I know, and I'm very careful with that, especially in hospitals. You can imagine they're all the rescuers, and potentially I can be the rescuer of the rescuers. So I feel my nourishing parent being activated. So I try not to go there and remain as an adult. And at the same time, I feel there is a lot of comfort that is asked. You know, like if I had to take care of them, I feel it's becoming more and more present. And as I'm having all the interviews, people start speaking, they start offloading. But because we create that safe space, so I feel it can be an advantage, and I'm very careful that it doesn't become therapeutic, because that's a danger, that we remain in coaching and don't drift to therapy. That's not what my contract. So I have to be very careful, but I can sense that I'm really drawn into that, both as a coach and as a therapist. And it's really a strange feeling, because I could feel a bit torn between the two. So that's what I can say at the moment, and we'll see the rest afterwards.
Okay, great. So now you're going to experiment in breakout rooms of 2. So we propose you to explore modes 1 to 4. So you take a situation, an individual coaching or collective coaching, whatever, and you work on a concrete example. Yes, of course.
Walking in the garden of these 4 eyes. the first 4 eyes that we saw.
So I5, this mode is about the supervisory relationship, and it's very interesting to look at parallel process. Here we are going to speak about the relationship between the coach and the reflective partner in our practice session, because we have no supervisor as such. So the relationship between the coach and the reflective partner, you're going to use your peer as a reflective partner, but when you're alone in your practice, you could also use yourself and develop your inner reflective partner, your inner supervisor, so to speak. So the questions here that are very interesting to ask yourself are, how free do you feel to talk about, observe, and explore difficult situations with the reflective partner? What do you notice but you haven't yet fully articulated? What would you like to change here and now in your strategy in this coaching? In the space between the coach and the reflective partner, what's similar to what's happening with your coachee? You know, that's very interesting to observe. What feelings, thoughts, body sensations are present as we work together that might speak about what the coach lives with the coachee, maybe. Who do I remind you of, for example, as a reflective partner, if anyone? What images, metaphors arise out of a relationship between the coach and the reflective partner?
So I6, the reflective partner. So whether it's my internal supervisor, I would say, or whether it's another person, it's really how I use myself, you know, my awareness. And as a Gestaltist, I really love that, using my awareness, what's happening inside me as what am I noticing as I'm hearing what's happening in the coaching context. So it's really interesting to use myself as a mirror that resonates, that reflects what's happening in my head, what am I noticing, what am I saying, what am I noticing in my heart, in my body. And it's really sharing my here and now experience with the other that is useful. And how does it inform me of what's happening in the relationship between the coach and the coachee? And of course, that will allow me to highlight the parallel process that Catherine just talked about. So I'm using the data in myself. It's like a mirror resonating, holding all the relationship. So for example, when you're talking about this client, I'm feeling frustration. You're talking about it with a great smile, but I feel a lot of frustration. You know, I could feel I'd like to react. How does this relate or not to the situation with your client? And actually, oh yes, yeah, actually I feel the same, or maybe I don't. And how is it informing us? So really, it's interesting to explore that. Or I could be, oh yes, I could feel really bored suddenly. Oh yes, actually interesting. My client told me that he's very bored in his work, but it wasn't in my mind. That kind of thing. And that's enough for me.
And let's go to I number 7, the wider context. Yes, let's have a look at the wider context to explore the impact of the context in which coaching takes place. So the kind of questions you can ask yourselves are, what are the other stakeholders that we have to take into account in this coaching contract? And how do they impact maybe the coaching itself? Who pays for the coaching? Who's the sponsor? That's important to have in mind. What confidentiality agreements or feedback agreements have been made in this coaching? Maybe what factors are involved in the client's family and work? Are there links to do there to have in mind that could impact the coaching as well? What's going on at the moment in the client's organization? Is there something that could create biases or impact the coaching in a sort of way. If there's, for example, a big transformation project, this can impact the way the objectives were brought at the beginning of the coaching. And maybe this could bring resistance in conscious in the wider system. And what unconscious level of systemic influences might be at play about place and role, for example, or how change is managed, for example, these kind of questions. So just to share an example, Anne, you want to share yours?
Yes, I start with mine. So if I go back to I5, well, actually, all of these are very related. So maybe I just do all of them together. So I5, really, what happened with my supervisor, actually, when we discussed it, is that it felt like a child who cannot speak, with a heavy burden, a broken heart, some kind of grieving. That's what my supervisor said to me, and that's how I could feel as well, you know. But the words that were put were really about grieving and this heaviness and something secret. Suddenly the word secret came up. And what I did is that I went back to the team because we were wondering, you know, in terms of the wider context, what's in the system that we haven't seen yet? And I asked to visit the premises. And when I went there, I found an obituary in the room where people would have their break. And actually, that's when I learned that one of their colleagues had committed suicide and that a 16-year-old daughter committed suicide 6 months later. And that actually, the reasons why the whole team couldn't work anymore is that this obituary was there and it was present and nothing was done, no ritual, no ceremony, nothing to honor that, nothing from HR or from the hospital. So there was some grieving process that couldn't be finished. So what we did is that we organized a ceremony thanks to that. So that's the wider system as well. So, and we took that time, we built that together and they chose, we constructed that together to take that off and put it very nicely in a box, take off the obituary from the wall, and so that it could be buried in another place. And we went to do that all together, all the people who wanted it, because some people in the team didn't want to do it because they were not there when this had happened. Just to let you know how 5, 6, and 7 suddenly brought us, shed some light on something that was unspoken.
To give the individual example, the end of the story with Carol, the coachee, there's a parallel process between my client who has to work on her tendency to hyper control and me who, for example, have a strong hypothesis about her, which is a kind of way of controlling the situation as if I understood everything and mastered everything, which is not the case, of course. So there's a parallel process here about control, something very interesting to observe. And I'd like to bring in this coaching other things, emergence, letting go, pacing down, inviting silence, body language. Yeah, I feel there's a demand for authentic connection and body language in this coaching. And what can I share as well is that an image, a metaphor coming from this coaching, an image of two squirrels, you know, joyfully running in a wheel. So we have to be careful, and the learning outcome here is about pace during the sessions. Let's relieve ourselves of this homeostasis tendency. Okay. In the wider system, what I would add just is that the direct manager of this coaching is embodying the ambivalence between high speed and pressure and awareness about the importance of keeping balance. You see, this can create things in the coaching process as well. And And there are many transformations everywhere, so this can reinforce the tendency to speed, to go fast, which is not the good track for the coaching. That's for my example.
Let's go back to breakout rooms and we'll check your questions in the meantime. Well, I wish all of us to have many eyes with a big heart, to hold the compassion and the love that we need to look with all our eyes. And thank you very much for joining today. Thank you. And thank you for Robin and Peter for creating that model for us. And I know they're celebrating the 30th anniversary of this model, and there's a GSN webinar on that soon. So if you want to check on that.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of you.